Hello, and welcome back to Game On. My name is Justin, and today we are doing another horror-themed board game. This is one of the Arkham Files games from Fantasy Flight called Arkham Horror Final Hour. In my mind, how I had this game and where I was reading reviews online and listening to reviews online, I was fully under the idea that this was Fantasy Flight's version of doing pandemic style mechanics in a Cthulhu world. Unlike Reign of Cthulhu, which was one of our first board game reviews for October of 2021. This is not that. If anything, it's closer to Arkham Horror by Fantasy Flight Games, which would make sense. And a lot of people are saying that this feels more like the last few turns of Arkham Horror, with the amount of absurd craziness that can happen. It is a much smaller board than Pandemic, or by, of course, Arkham Horror, which is a pretty big board. I'm specifically talking about 2nd edition. I don't have 3rd edition, but I play the heck out of 2nd edition Arkham Horror, as well as I love Eldritch Horror as well. This game frustrated me to no end, and let me tell you a little bit why. In this game, you play as fancy Fantasy Flight characters that many of you probably know. Akin, Pete, Jenny Barnes, those iconic characters that we play in the Arkham Files for Fantasy Flight Arkham Horror games. They are just known, they have stories written about them, they have fiction about them written, they are very awesome characters. I went to Jenny Barnes. That's who I picked because I love Jenny Barnes. Unfortunately, in this game that is kind of marketed as a cooperative game of mystery for 1 to 4 players, had us banging our heads against the table, Spencer and Kevin and I, 2 seasoned board game veterans playing with me, who's also quite seasoned with board games, because if this is what people think a cooperative game is, then no wonder why people don't like to play board games. Because this was not a cooperative board game in any stretch of the imagination. The only reason why it's cooperative is because we all wanted to win. The way this game works is you are given a deck of specific actions that your character can do, as well as an initiative deck where you can draw, and depending on the number that you decide to play in the initiative, allows you to either go first, second, third, last, depending on how many people are playing. And you want to be first because the first 1 or 2 people get to play their top action, whereas the second or the third or fourth people, the back 2 initiatives, have to play their bottom card. And the bottom card is really bad because it usually means monsters are going to move around the board, attack you, destroy buildings. The problem is you're not allowed to tell your fellow players that you need to go first. You're not allowed to discuss it at all. The rules specifically say, nope, there can be no discussion, you just put one down. I can't even tell you guys, I can't say, hey guys, I really need to go first. Or at least I need to not go last. You can't say that. You're not allowed to say anything like that. And it was infuriatingly mad because the 3 of us are used to playing Eldritch Horror. And in Eldritch Horror, whatever you do, it's a fully cooperative game. I can show you my entire hand. We can sit and wait and discuss what we're going to do next. And it is the true definition of a cooperative game. Or in this, we are unknowingly backstabbing each other by accident we left the game just like, did we, what was cooperative about that? And for a little bit of information on how you play the game, if you've played Arkham Horror or if you've played Eldritch Horror, then you'll probably understand the slight mechanics of this game. You have a box full of monsters, and they will be moving around the board. Instead of summoning cultists and doing crazy destruction through certain location cards, the monsters themselves are actually trying to get to a summoning point, which is randomly located somewhere on the board, and they are trying to move to it. If they came to the athletic facilities, there's only 2 here, so if there was 3 monsters that filled into here, we would automatically lose. The monsters have to move via these red and blue paths. The monster cards that you draw and the event cards will tell you how they move, but what you're trying to do is look for clues that are randomly generated and scattered around Miskatonic University and explore and get enough clues to where you can figure out which clues are needed to help close the final summoning gate. Problem is that you don't choose what to do. It's all based on initiative. So I could have been here at the Student Union and there's a clue token here, and my action said, search for a clue and kill a monster. But my bottom would say, move towards the closest monsters and get attacked, or something like that, which is actively bad for me and actively bad for the group because we want that token, but because I was last in initiative, because I couldn't tell my fellow players that I needed to go first to find that clue, I don't get to find the clue and I die. It is frustrating. It is not a game that I would suggest people playing who are trying to dabble into cooperative board games, because it is definitely not a cooperative board game. Now, I asked the questions that I asked about the Seven Souls and Reign of Cthulhu to Spencer and Kevin, to the group, to figure out how they felt about it. My question was, is this something that you would put into your general rotation of gaming? One said, heck no. One of us said, yeah, we'd give it a shot. And the other person was kind of in between, where it's like, I'd give it more shots, but I'd have to play it with the right people. Second question I asked is this something that you would break out at a Halloween party? Again, I know not every Halloween party has a crowd where people will be willing to play a board game, and you have to be able to read the room and know who's there to break out any kind of board game, just in general, for a Halloween party, because not every party calls for gaming. All 3 of us said no. This is not a game that we would break out. It's a relatively easy game to learn. Took us about 30 minutes to lose. Again, we've played Arkham and Eldritch Horror, so we kind of understood the basic backbone of how the game played. If you're new to this kind of game, you might find yourself kind of getting lost in the directions. We wouldn't break this board game out at a Halloween party. And finally, I paid $30 for this. I did not get this game from my favorite local game store. I actually bought this game off of a website named after a rainforest. I had a sale. I got it for $30. And I asked, would you buy it at full price? Would you buy it on sale, or would you not buy it? I didn't buy it at full price. I'll straight up say that I wouldn't have bought this at full price. I'm happy I didn't. I'm happy I bought it for $18 cheaper. And both said that they would wait for it on sale, probably for a 50% off sale. So if they could get it for about $25 or $20, they would buy it. It's definitely not something that any of us would want to pay full price for or suggest people to pay full price for. The general consensus on Board Game Geek is that this is a 6.6 out of 10. But what I can't quite understand is, I'm sorry, my nose is so itchy. What I can't quite understand is why everybody keeps on saying that this is Pandemic. This is not Pandemic. This is not how I know Pandemic to play. So the only thing that might work, like be close to Pandemic, is the way that the gates and the locations pop with monsters, but That's more closely related to Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror than it is to Pandemic. And the fact that the game plays itself pretty much, you don't have any control really over of how the game plays. It's more of a passive game where you are mad at your fellow players who are supposed to be on your side because they're unbeknowingly screwing you over. Leads to a sour taste in my mouth where I will give it another shot, but dear Lord, I'm gonna need a break from it. So, I thank you guys very much for watching. I hope that you liked this review. I'm sorry, this is very subjective. I understand that some people might love this game. It's not something that I love, like the other Arkham Horror File games from Fantasy Flight. Hey, if you love it, let us know in the comments why you do. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys very much for watching, and don't forget to game on.